This Flight Model P-51D ARF comes from the factory without an antenna. Most World War II aircraft have prominent, recognizable antennas. The P-51D, the Japanese A6M0, the Messerschmitt Bf-109, they all had large, prominent antennas. And I feel that without the antenna, the model just does not look right. So I set about to create an antenna that would be mounted on the fuselage. It could stay on the fuselage all the time. In other words, it would not have to be removed for transport. And mounted in such a way that even if it was bumped, it would not be damaged and hopefully not be lost. So I'm making a new antenna, and what I'm using a Aero Detail 13. And these are really good books, by the way, if you ever want to do some scale detailing. These are really good. All their diagrams in the back are 1/48 scale. And so I just measured what they show for their antenna back here. It looks like it's wide at the base and then kind of angles to a point at the top. So I duplicated that or replicated that. And what I want to do is to use a magnet on the bottom to hold it, and I needed some way to have kind of an anti-rotation pin. Now I've tried all different kinds of things with antennas. They need to be removable, because otherwise if they aren't removable by design, they're going to be removable at some point when they break. So I've tried bamboo skewers, I've tried toothpicks, I've tried music wire. Nothing I found really seems to work. They all seem to break. So what I want to do is use an antenna that's just easily removable. I mean, if it gets hit, it just bounces off. So I'm going to use a magnet in the back, and then as kind of an anti-rotation pin, I'm going to use a spring. Or I'm going to try to use a spring. So half of it goes into the antenna, the other half goes into the fuselage. And the idea is that if the antenna gets bumped, the magnet gives away and the spring also gives away. Or, possibly it could just bend and then pop back, depending how hard it gets hit. That's the idea. I've not done this before with a spring, so it's kind of new. I'm going to give it a shot, see how it works. I have about 3/8 of an inch or so of the spring in the balsa, and then the other 3/8 is going to go into the fuselage. You'll notice some white. When I drilled the hole for the spring at first, it actually went through the balsa. So I had to use some epoxy micro balloons and kind of reshape this. And then I re-drilled my hole for the spring. That actually worked out really well, because the epoxy micro balloons is much tougher than the balsa, and it gives you a cleaner hole after you've drilled it. For the fuselage part of the antenna, the mount that the antenna will mount to, I'm under a couple of constraints here. One, I can't really access it. I can't get my hand far enough back inside the fuselage to really get to the bottom of this. I can tell that there's no support, for example, there's no wood or anything like that underneath the fiberglass. So it's just fiberglass. And the fiberglass is pretty thin. So I really don't have much meat to maybe glue a magnet or something like that in underneath this fiberglass. So I need to make some sort of base that I can open up the fuselage and then glue the base in and make it strong enough to where it'll hold. So what I've come up with is this. I took a piece of balsa and I drew the outline of the antenna and then cut that oval out. And then I've put the antenna up underneath that base, and I put a piece of clear packing tape. And the packing tape is what's holding the antenna to the base. And then I just glued on some balsa sides. This is a quick and dirty jig. And what I want to do is fill this little box with epoxy micro balloons. I've made it 1/8 of an inch, roughly 1/8 of an inch oversized in the rectangular shape. And I've made it 3/8 of an inch tall, because the magnet that's going to go in the fuselage, I'm going to use a 3/8 inch magnet. So now what I'll do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill in with some epoxy micro balloons. I'll make it a fairly thick mix so that it's light, and then I can come back and shape that micro balloon to match the shape of the antenna. To keep the epoxy micro balloons from sticking to the plastic, I'm dipping it in alcohol. I'm going to try to just pack it down as best I can. I really don't want to move that 3/8 inch magnet if I can help it. Now, you think that's packed down good enough? I would really not want to have any voids in there if I can help it. That'll just make things a little bit harder when it comes time to put that spring in. It's the next morning, and I've cut away the four balsa sides of the box, just leaving the bottom for now. And it looks like I didn't quite get enough of the mix down inside. There's a little bit of a gap right here. I think I can fix that. But before I do that, I think I want to go ahead and try to shape this. I'm just going to sand it to the same shape as the mast. And I also need to drill my hole for the spring. I've got tick marks, and I think I'm just going to transfer those tick marks to the epoxy micro balloon mix, and then use those to try to drill the hole. I want to drill the hole before I shape this, so that in case there's a little bit of a mismatch between the spring and the mast and the hole here, that waiting to shape it, I can go ahead and get that spring set and then come around and shape, and hopefully it'll be a perfect fit. So the magnet's pretty strong, that's good. I'm going to go ahead and mark and drill for my spring. Balsa piece away, it should just peel right away, and it does. So now it's time, let's see how this spring fits. So if it gets bumped, it gives, it wobbles, but it doesn't fall down. So I sanded the base, I put some yellow tape around the mast, and then sanded the base flush. The base is just slightly proud of the mast about the thickness of the tape. I then took the mast and drew an outline of it on the top of the fuselage. Now I'm going to go ahead and try drilling a couple of holes and then clean this out. Okay, so maybe I should have checked this a little closer. I mean, that's really a perfect fit. I would like for it to have been a little snug, maybe like a little friction fit. But I believe I can glue that in there. Let me get my finger out of the way so you can see. Yeah. My apologies, I forgot to turn the camera on when I glued this in. But basically I just took a steel rule and lowered the base in to the fuselage and then gave it a little touch of thin CA around the edges. There's going to either be a little bit of a gap in front or a gap in back. I chose to put the gap in back since the front needs to be filled in a little bit anyway. So I think this is going to work out fairly well. So if it gets bumped, it comes right back. And I believe on the real aircraft, I think there is a little bit of a flange around the base, maybe like some weather stripping or something. So I can put that around the base as well. And that'll help even more with keeping this. I don't think it's going to really want to turn too much. I think that's going to work pretty well. I kind of like that.